You were listening to episode 171 of Mitolife Radio. I am your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm speaking with Hendrik Haueisen of CBH Wood Furniture, also called Swiss Dream Beds. I came across a similar bed with the wooden slat system and the non-toxic material, all virgin sheep's wool and tallow latex and untreated wood. And I never thought I could afford one because the price tag was over $10,000. And then I discovered this company through my friend Ben Belty, and I was blown away at how affordable it is. I've bought beds online with all of the moves that I've done in the last couple of years. And by the time you pay for the frame, the foundation, the mattress, it's well over $2,000 and sometimes over $3,000. And all of the beds that I've ever found that are really convenient, because if you're moving, you just ship it to your new spot and it just pops up and it's really easy to put together in a few minutes. But it's all made from really toxic material, polyester, synthetic material that off-gasses volatile organic compounds. And I think that really matters if you're creating a gas chamber in your bedroom, just gassing yourself with these VOCs. I'm really shocked researching the cold pads that people use that run cold water through tubes on the top layer of their bed so they can sleep cooler. It's all made from polyester. I haven't found one that's made from natural material. And so I stopped using technology. I mean, for one, I'm fully off grid, but I just wanted to experience the temperature regulating effect of natural materials that are in these Swiss Dream Beds. And it's amazing. I actually do stay cooler on their bed when I'm actually not sleeping on polyester in between me and the natural material. And this took me at least 2 years to figure out and realize that I was defeating the purpose of sleeping on untreated virgin sheep wool and natural latex by putting this cooling pad above me. Not saying it's harmful, it's all context, but I think we underestimate the harm that could come from sleeping around polyester pads or pillows or all of the material that people tend to be exposed to with these as seen on TV products or health products. They're generally not made with quality materials. So Hendrik Haueisen breaks down how this came to be in Germany, and he walks through each layer and each component of these beds and the purpose for each part. And what really blew my mind was the self-cleaning ability that this kind of a bed has, which is really important when you realize bed bugs and dust mites and all of the critters that can live in a bed. It becomes like a horror movie. So this self-cleaning quality of the materials that they use is really powerful. And it's a very specific type of sheep's wool, as he explains. So enjoy the show. Here is Hendrik Haueisen. All right, we are here with Hendrik Haueisen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, talking about sleep and how to improve it. I think this area of health is kind of overlooked. I know like the cooling sleep pads have become popular the last few years in the biohacking community, and everyone's looking to, mouth tape and nasal dilators and high dose melatonin or all these really advanced sleep tactics. But I think it's easy to overlook just the quality of the actual bed, the frame, the mattress, the whole setup. And what you guys have done over at CBH Wood Furniture with the Swiss Dream Beds is just incredible. It totally transformed the way I sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I share your sentiment on the beds. My wife and I were always very hard pressed to stay anywhere else. If we're within driving distance of coming home, we're driving home. That's right. It does make a big difference. Yeah, I mean, you know, if we talk about how we got involved, we originally were from Germany. We immigrated to Canada back in 2007, and by some people call it the luck of the draw, or by God's grace, there was a guy who knocked on our door within 2 months of arriving in Canada, and he turned out to be some Swiss millionaire who ran or who invented a bed some many years ago, and had a production facility here in Canada. And he had long been looking for somebody competent to run it. And my dad, he had carpentry experience from Germany, ran his own business there for 25 years or so. And yeah, and that was kind of what he was looking for. And we moved here, word got around, and he popped up in front of our door one of these days. And that's how that all got started.
That's incredible. Wow. Um, and what were you guys sleeping on before?
Well, we were sleeping on more or less traditional German setup, which consists roughly of a 6-inch uh, coil kind of a mattress with a slat system where the slats are under tension. So you tighten those slats, and there's a little moving, like pieces of plastic. You would move them to the outside or to middle, depending on how tense you want those slats to be under you. Um, yeah, that was it, and then never again since I think 2010, 2009 or so. We started then sleeping on these beds. Um, Took a couple of years. I mean, we knew the system then for 2 years, and my dad had slept on that earlier because he actually had quite severe back pain from doing manual labor most of his life. And then I think I got involved. I actually got sleeping on the beds in 2009 or 10 or so.
Did
Yeah.
you and your wife notice like immediate benefits from making the switch, like after the first night on it?
Now, for me, it's been so long ago. I'm a pretty healthy guy. I started sleeping on this bed when I was 20. Yeah, I was 20 years old. When you're 20, you're sort of invincible and you can sleep on the floor. So most people may not notice a real difference. But I started to notice a difference when my wife and we had gotten married, and I had slept on her old bed before we had moved everything together for like a couple of nights, and it was pretty bad. It was, it was more or less traditional mattress with some memory foam on top, and I remember actually the funny thing was I would go to the gym after work, an hour or so. And then so my usual routine was go to work, go to gym, go home, then a soccer game late at night, depending on the day, and then I go to bed. And after I slept on her bed, I remember once or twice, I couldn't figure out for the life of me why I was so sore the next day. And then eventually I got to realize, like, you know what? I've recovered a lot better on my bed coming from the gym. And so that's what I was told in theory, anyways, that these slats keep pushing back on you as you move, and the guy who designed it in his literature, he said you can think of it as like a kind of a micro massage. You have these points pushing back on you, and so that was really the only explanation I could think about while I was so sore the next day. As in, I was sore from the gym, and I was never sore from the gym. I recovered really well. And so the next day, I'm like, all these soreness in my body. And then I figured I was like, oh yeah, I'm not sleeping on my bed anymore. For my wife, she used to sleep on her stomach all the time. And, it took about a month or so after she started sleeping, after we got married and she slept on our bed then, that, she started to sleep more on her side, more on her back. I do remember telling her a few times, make sure you turn around on your stomach. So I was helping her a little bit. And but there is the theory that some people sleep on their stomachs because they're not really comfortable in any other position, and the reason they're not comfortable is because the bed doesn't allow them to get comfortable. And so I did find I don't know the percentage because I don't get a good follow up with our customers, but there is a certain percentage where people just start to turn once they sleep on a bed that's good for them. And some people, they just continue on in their stomach. That there's no one fix all, but that this seems to happen from time to time. I get those comments from time to time.
It's really interesting you say that, because I've been a back sleeper my entire life, and recently I started being able to sleep on my side, which is unique. Not all night, but just I kind of switch positions, and it kind of feels better to do that. Just kind of changing it up. But I wonder if that's the quality of the bed, kind of to the point you were just saying.
It's certainly possible. It's always hard to look inside of a person, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say no, but it's hard to say yes with certainty too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a good bed, if it allows you to sleep that way, it allows you to. If it doesn't, well, then it doesn't.
Do most beds in developed countries worldwide, like in Germany, the US, Canada, like the UK, are they mostly coil style, like the coil style mattresses?
Well, the foam is certainly, well, used to be mostly coil. The foam is certainly, I don't know if it's predominant now. I remember going to various places that sell beds. You find predominantly either full memory foam or a combination of coils and memory foam topper. I did once find a very interesting system that was sort of foam coils. So they combined both of them. And but I think but it goes back probably to what you see on TV marketed most is what you're going to see in the store most, and it's probably a kind of a memory foam or some combination with some chemically derived foam, anyways.
Yeah, it blows my mind when I go into stores like that where they have all the beds, and um, I'm just shocked at the price, especially as we'll talk about later, like the affordability of your beds versus these other beds that, I mean, I've spent double before I discovered your company on a bed that wasn't as good. And I think that's very common, unfortunately. And I guess we can go into like the detriment of the memory foam beds and the coils. I've had a few EMF experts on the podcast, and one of the guys he was talking about how basically the coils will, like, it's a really complex process, but the Wi-Fi or the surrounding EMFs will hit the coils in the bed and actually create like a secondary frequency that's different. And so we have no idea what effects that would have on human physiology, but they're probably not good effects because it's completely unnatural to get kind of radiated from from below all night.
Yeah, yeah. So the inventor of the bed, his name is Balthasar Hüssler, a Swiss guy, and he knew when he invented this bed back in the 70s, he was quite aware that there was something going on with magnetic fields, and especially in beds. And I know there's various research done. I remember reading a study, I think it was from Sweden, one of the Scandinavian countries, and they did make exactly that point that, in a sense, the metal captures various frequencies and then it amplifies it. In a sense, it builds a bubble around it, and so you sleep in that, and Balthasar was aware of that back then. Actually, before that piece of paper, I think that the paper was done sometime in the early 90s or at some point. So, and I don't that seems to be sort of the major reference point for many of the people referring back to, and but he was on the ball a few decades before that. I mean, he's Swiss, when you live in the mountains, and you're much more naturally minded, and you're much more inclined to question what disturbances in the environment will do to you, I guess. Um, so
Was
that's
he
how
into?
he invented this. And maybe I'll go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna ask. Was he into earthing and grounding? 'Cause he sounds like he was on it. Like, did he ground his bed or sleep grounded or?
Not that I'm aware of. He was more into, so the way this bed came about was he it was in the 70s. So let me just think back. He's now close to 90. So 70s, that's 50 years ago. He was about 40 years old and was diagnosed with chronic lower back pain. Doctors basically said to him, "Look, we can't do anything for you." And so off he went, and after some time, figured out it's probably his bed that caused something to him because he didn't have the accident, the fall, whatever it may be. Nothing that was sort of a, a traumatic event, and so he had quite extensive background in civil engineering, so static engineering, and also some of his passions were human anatomy and various other things. And so he putting those together took him a few years. He came up with a kind of a flexible slat system, and within a few nights, back pain goes away. Now, obviously, that doesn't work for everybody, but it from what I know. Um, so the theory is that when you have your vertebrae and you have discs between the vertebrae, and there you can think of them like a sponge, and so you have those vertebrae as you walk and move around, uh, always pressing on those discs, those sponges, in a sense, and then pushing out the fluid between them, so that when you wake up in the morning, on average, if you had a good night's sleep, you're probably an inch taller than when you go to bed, just with all the discs being squished out by the end of the day. And so the point of sleep then, or one of the major purposes of sleep, is to regenerate the fluid in those discs. And so you need all the pressure off those discs. And so he's like, okay, what kind of a sleeping system allows me to get those discs to relax? And because the problem is always, we're all a bit heavier in one area or another, so it can't. There's a problem. Your body wants to sink more there and less there, and your spine is naturally curved a certain way. And so the question is then, okay, how can you best balance this on a bed? And so this flexible slat system is what he ended up with. And really, I remember, so he said the way he came to this was, there was an old story of a businessman who would go to the hotel and he'd find the mattress way too soft. So he would go to the bathroom door, unhinge it, shove it under the mattress, and to get some firmness into the mattress. And so that's sort of the thinking. It's basically the flexible door under your mattress. Um, that's how that came about. And then in the 80s, he started selling this, and it's been a real hit in Europe and in Asia. Japan, actually, they sell a lot of beds now to Japan, which was sort of unexpected because most Japanese still like to lay on a futon on the floor and not on an actual bed with frame. But they have made really good inroads there because of the design, the materials, and the simplicity of it.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, I've been playing around with like a cervical stretcher that pretty much is a pump that you put behind your neck, and you pump it up and you strap in your forehead, and it kind of hydrates the discs in your neck. And I never thought about that with sleep. An inch taller when you wake up. That's fascinating.
Yeah, if you had a good night's sleep.
Didn't go out for a night of drinking, right? Probably pretty dehydrated.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Wow. Um, yeah, I think the back pain thing is super common and overlooked. I mean, just driving, doing office work, all of the sitting that most of us do, like overly sitting, right? Like sitting isn't bad. It's just when it's overdone, right? Then it can be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same problem. I still work Although, I mean, you were very kind in your Facebook or Instagram post to say the founder of Swiss Green Beds. I thought it's more like I just paid the government to open to open a company. So I don't think of myself as much of a founder, other than the guy who paid this $80 fee to get his name put on the record.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
didn't
I
know the
still,
story of the I didn't know the story of the Swiss founder. That's interesting.
yeah. Yeah, I still work, like, because they're saying the sitting. I still work in engineering most of my day, and my dad builds most of the beds, and then I do most of the talking with people and explaining to them how the bed works. And but yeah, with the sitting, I'm with you. It's too much. You can buy a standing desk, and that's really good. But then you also sort of end up standing in an unnatural posture because you get tired and lazy.
Yeah, that's what I was doing a few years ago. Like in 2020, I had the little stool where that's supposedly healthier than a chair, and you kind of just rest your pelvis on this stool. And I did that for the first 50 or so podcast episodes, and then I just started to feel that my back was being strained. So it's really interesting. Like you can stand too much or sit too much. It's just all about finding that balance, right? That sweet spot of all of them. And a lot of my friends are into
Yeah.
squatting. They say that's a really good way to release back tension for free. It's just squatting, for 10 minutes a day or something as a start.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, where can we go from here? So with the slats, it can be an adjustment for some people. Like I've found, um, like if you have a two slat system with like a full bed or a king bed, um, if you're sleeping alone, then you can't sleep in the middle of it because you're going to like lose the benefit and potentially uh, not have a good outcome, right? But so you kind of have to choose one or the other side, if you have a bigger bed. So what I did, you helped me set up my outdoor bed on my deck. It's kind of an experiment where it's on springs and grounded to the earth. I have a rod 2 stories down, pounded in the dirt, and then I have like a huge lodestone boulder. It's probably like 30-40 pounds that I use as a counterbalance on the other side of the bed, since it's kind of hanging, and if it's just me, it'll slant. And so I put a huge rock or multiple, and so it's one big experiment. Because the interesting thing about grounding, if you take a voltmeter with magnetite's been struck by lightning, so it's a lodestone. It's like an earth magnet. The voltage will actually go up like substantially, and that can be measured. So, yeah, it's kind of fun. And I remember the first bed I bought from you, I was sleeping on the Magnetico sleep pad, which I don't
Yeah.
denounce. I just think that it's really strong and should be used with caution if used for several years, because it can cause a Herxheimer's reaction and detox. But you probably thought I was crazy when I first told you about it. I'm sleeping on a 20 Gauss, magnetic field, and you're probably thinking that's overkill.
Well, yeah, I guess I never considered it that way because we always more thought, so let's try to get out of all the EMFs. But yes, sure, there's the magnetic does address that a little bit differently. But just to go back to the slats, because you mentioned about the two slat systems. So yeah, so for the bigger beds, we can start at the what is it, double in Canada? I think it's full size in the US. Um, that and the queen and the king, we generally provide the bed with two separate slat systems, meaning that one side is in a sense completely separate from the other. So you can think of it as you have two foundations to your bed in the same bed. Yeah, when you sleep in the middle, I mean, I do have some people who like to sleep in the middle. It's not that it doesn't work as well as designed. It will work. It's just a lot firmer because you're now because those slats, one slat system sits on two latex supports. So there's a beam of latex on the right, a beam on the left, and then the slat that spans across that. So all your weight gets, at the end of the day, caught in the latex down there. So the slats will push down into the latex. So when you sleep right in the middle, you are, in a sense, having double the resistance to your weight. And so it's a bit firmer. I mean, when I really need a quick back fix, I go lay in the middle of the bed for 5 minutes, and it feels really good. I just can't do a whole night on it, and I get a bit too sore. It's too much resistance. But some people who like to sleep really firm, they do like that. But it's not intended to be that way. It's just an unintended consequence, and sometimes they have some bad unintended consequences with them.
That's good to know. I might experiment then this summer. Yeah, it's pretty cool. The first night I slept out there, I heard a giant moose jump in my lake and was swimming around like midnight. So it's a pretty good sleeping experience. Interesting. And do any other beds come close to this design, or is this a completely new, like, new setup? Like,
yeah. So I guess maybe we'll quickly go back to what I said earlier, how this bed came about. So Balthasar Hüssler, he then in the 80s, I think it was in 82. Yeah, it was in 82. He founded a company called Hüssler Nest. Nest being like a bird's nest, and just his last name in front of it. It's a German idiom. But so they started selling these beds, and when I said they are being sold into Europe and Asia, lots into Japan, that's through Hüssler Nest, the original company. And we used to, in Canada, simply produce or manufacture the lumber for them, and they put that all together in Switzerland and then send it out. It's a bit different now, but we can talk about that later. But more to your question. So if there's any other beds like that around, that was the first one like that came up. And then, like it always is, when something good comes out, you don't have to wait long until some other people see some opportunity, because the market isn't saturated at first at all, and they try to do their thing, and maybe try to do something like it or very similar to it, or maybe just incorporate some elements of the design. So you can see some of them around. I know there's a I don't know the name anymore. There was a company out west in Canada that just sort of jumped up a few years ago, and there's another company out west in the States. But in terms of our connection, we are very closely connected to this original Swiss company, Hüssler Nest. Basically, the way that our bed came about was we no longer had manufactured wood for the Swiss, and the plan was to make the Canadian operation independent. And also Balthasar thought, after 30 years it was then, he's like, let's see if we can redevelop the bed a little bit, see if there's any quirks that can be worked out or not. And so that's how we came up with this bed design at the end of the day. And my dad had but then moved here, and he had a lot of knowledge in different kinds of wood and how they work, and how they react to moisture and various things that affect the long term, how long the bed will last and how it may change over time. Because the point was to see if the bed could be made so that it is in 10 years roughly the same as it is in year one. And so obviously the latex makes a big difference, but also, I mean, you're in Idaho, wood is not plastic. It changes, it swells up, and it, releases moisture, and so there's some issues when you go with natural materials that need to be figured out. And so I guess somebody could go, and you can go and on the Hüssler Nest website, and you'll see our bed is, slightly different, or theirs looks a bit more complex. But from an engineering point of view, it's pretty much the exact same in terms of how much wood is in the bed, how much latex is in the bed, because that really determines some of the things on how the bed works and how it works together, the latex and the the wood. And so although it looks a little bit different, I think they have two rows of slats, much thinner and smaller than ours. We have one row of slats, bigger and thicker. But when you add up the various dimensions, you end up with the exact same amount, more or less exact same amount of wood and the exact same amount of latex, just spread out a little bit differently over the design.
Interesting. Well, that's a good segue to get into the latex. 'Cause that's something I learned about from you guys. The difference, because I thought my original belief was that latex is all synthetic and unnatural. But then I learned latex comes from the rubber tree, right? It's the sap. But most companies aren't using that. They're using like some weird material that off gases.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar to, I don't know if you have maple trees in Idaho, but if you did, is a sap in there and you can eat it. And so it's same with latex. It comes, they tap a tree and then it runs out just like maple syrup would come out of a maple tree, and they catch it with a bucket and send it off to process it. Now we get our latex from a place called Volatile in the Netherlands. And that was it's the same place that Nest gets their mattresses from as well. And now in the last few years now, they used to be 95% pure with their mattresses in terms of the latex content. And they have, over the last few years, stepped that up to 97%. And, the 3% is like it's the stuff you won't find out what's in it, just like you won't find out the Coca-Cola recipe kind of thing. It's that sort of a company secret. Not that I'm promoting Coca-Cola in any way. But so what they do is they get that latex from various places around the world, in Pacific Asia and in South America, and they ship it there. Now, the Vita Talale is not certified organic like others have their mattresses organic, and you can read this up on their FAQ on the site. Basically, they say, with food, it makes sense to have organic food, but for latex, it doesn't really make sense because you just end up with zap. If you have real organic latex, you just have a kind of a white milk, and so that is not very useful. So you need something to make this sap to foam into a shape that then can dry, and so that's where the 3% come in. And so instead of the organic, you can still get the organic certification, and places do that, but they decided not to. They thought it's more important to track the zap from the tree to the factory instead of just to test the latex that's in the factory. And so they got this thing called cradle to cradle gold. And then what they do is, because they do have to add that 3% mixture in order to shape it into a mattress, they send all of that then to a place called Eco Institute in Germany, and they test it for harmful substances, and their general testing criteria is in infants' health. So, as good as you can get anyways. And that's probably most on the latex. There's some good things about latex, because I know some of your followers on Facebook would probably ask about, sleeping hot and all of this stuff. So latex, they are the two kinds. There's the Dunlop and the Talalay latex. That we use the Talalay latex. The difference is just one step in production, more or less. The Talalay latex gets one additional step in where they put it into the latex mixture into a centrifuge. They spin it so that at the end of the day, the material has the same consistency all the way through, so that it's not more dense in one spot than another, so it's roughly equal throughout, which is why Talalay is usually more expensive, because it takes an extra step to make it. You can, your audience can make up his mind which one is better, but that's how it works. and so that because they do some of these extra steps, it makes it increases breathability because it's more consistent. Latex itself is open cell, whereas like a memory foam would be a closed cell. It works with heat, and if you lay in a memory foam, if it's in the wintertime, it's hard and it takes a little while to sink in. At least so I'm told. I rely on my customers telling me these things because I don't sleep on that kind of a bed. But so they tell me, and then in the summer it molds to your body much easier when it's nice and warm outside because in theory that's how it should work. It should mold like as you lay into it. The heat sort of breaks down the material around you, and then it molds to your body. And latex works a bit different because it's open cell. It doesn't do that molding process to your body, but it's kind of like a like a sponge. It's very elastic. If you lay in it, it wants to keep pushing you out. It doesn't just cuddle around you.
I love it. Yeah, I think I've ordered like 4 beds from you guys in the last several years, and whenever I open up the package, it's like Christmas morning because I don't know, it's something about the smell of the latex and of the sheep wool topper. It just smells so good. It's probably better than gasoline. I used to like that smell growing up, so this is probably a healthier one to smell. Probably better for my system.
Yeah.
But I thought, Hendrik, we should probably just to structure this, like start from the bottom of the bed and work up, because we kind of skipped the frame, and just to keep it organized, because I could go off on so many different directions with you. But the frame, like I'll just say Casper's, the bed I used to buy, and it was super expensive. I paid like double what I paid for your beds, and the frame that they provide is metal, and so you have like another EMF antenna because metals, whether it's in tattoos or jewelry or whatever, any kind of metal in your body will attract EMFs. And it's just wild to think that people are combining like metal frames with the Coil mattresses. It's just metal on metal, and they're in an apartment with 20, 30, 40 Wi-Fi signals. And I think the frame's a big deal. So what you guys provide, it's pretty cool. Your whole bed has 0 metal in it, right? And you offer like different styles of wood for the frame.
Yeah. So the frame is that there isn't a good term in English. You can think of it as solid engineered wood. So it's real wood. And why it's not just solid wood, because solid wood would be a solid piece of wood, just sort of shaped around the outside to fit. But that doesn't really work too well, especially in North America where we have high humidity. So what we do is we cut the wood down and then we put it back together. So that takes some of the, because what happens is with a solid piece of wood, if you make a bed frame or anything out of just one piece, then it starts to bend and warp and swell and all these things over time. And so that if you need to stay connected to something, you may rip the connection, or the bed may become wonky, and it starts to make some noise because 3 legs are only on the ground and 1 leg's up in the air a little bit. And so we cut the tree down. The tree gets cut down by somebody else, but we buy the raw wood from the sawmills, and then we cut it into pieces and put it back together into a solid engineered frame. That's why I use the word engineered, because we did something to it. We use a glue for that. And I know usually in North America, glues are pretty dirty, lots of chemicals in them. Our glue is basically a mixture of limestone and water. So this glue, we had it tested also by the Eco, because when we worked with Hüsler everything has to be, when we provided wood for them, everything has to be tested by Eco Institute, because this was the standard. So same with the glue. So it's the kind of glue where you can, work with your bare hands if you get it all over you while you just peel it off an hour later, and there aren't any adverse health effects. Neither is there any off-gassing coming out, because again, that testing criteria is the infant's health. So same goes for the glue. And so we put the frame together. The issue was that, the latex, as you know, latex is pretty expensive. And then if you go with telluride latex, it gets even more expensive. So the question was that my dad was trying to solve was like, okay, we can make a great bed system, but how can we come up with a frame that's really inexpensive to add to it? Because, most people will probably buy the whole setup if we can give it to them for a good value. And because also we can make it natural, and, people appreciate that. And so we came up with this. It's a very simple frame construction. There's 4 legs, and they're connected by some braces that run right to left. And so you said there's no metal in it. And the way we solve this is that Balthazar and my dad came up with this fiberglass reinforced plastic connector system. And, so you have the frame, you have these connection system with the positive and the negative, so you can put one in the other and click in, kind of like an IKEA setup. So it's very easy. You don't need any tools. And then also they're quite strong. So one of them can, if I get this number right, I haven't looked this up in a long, long time or talked about it. I think each one of these connectors can withstand roughly about 2,000 pounds. And so each piece that gets connected with 4 connectors on each side. So there's plenty of strength to that this will never break. Or if one of them will break, there's 3 more. And at this point in the decade or so that we've used it, we haven't had a single broken one, which is great. Because at the end of the day, I'm happy if I can send out the bed and I never hear from you again unless you want to tell me something nice about it. So that's. I don't want you coming back to me saying, "Oh, this is broken, that's broken," because it's not good for you and it's not good for me at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it was only the first bed I put together that was a learning process. And I remember a rubber mallet with like a towel to, in between helped to get it like pushed down once it was in the grooves to just like solidify it. And then also twisting the bed. I was confused at first. I had the bed like the wrong way, so I just had to turn it, because I thought the head to toe was a different direction.
Yeah, I've learned from those mistakes, and I've made a video that I send along now with how to set up the bed. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. I mean, even because you said you use the rubber mallet to put it together, and the reason is that these 4 connectors, they fit fairly tight, and they need to be very tight so that you don't have any creaking noise in the bed when you move. And we all move at night, and so it's just about noise elimination. And so they have to be quite tight, and you can sometimes they click in by hand. Sometimes you need a little bit of something to give it a little hit to click it in. But yeah, it all goes back to, my dad's German and everything is made to German standards. So we can't have this stuff wiggling around too much.
Well, I love it. Yeah, I have a frame now that I got from a wood furniture store here in Idaho that's pretty heavy and huge, but it looks cool. And so it's a little bit of an upgrade. And so the frame's built, and then just to kind of paint a picture in listeners' minds. So you have the frame, the 4 kind of walls of it. And then the next thing is you include wooden dowels. That's what they're called, right? And these little like pieces that you put, I think 3, 3, and 3, like vertically along the bed. And then you put the wool, help, I forget what those pieces are called. Yeah.
Yeah. So we basically, the bed would consist of two components, more or less. You have the frame and then the mattress system. And the frame is the frame. We've talked about the mattress system. It consists of these latex supports, or some people call them latex beams. That, again, the German word does not exist in English, so we'll take whatever you want to call them. But on top of those, they have the slats, and then on top of the slats is a 4-inch latex mattress, and then the wall topper on top of that. So that's what we would call the mattress system, and it gets connected to the frame by using, like you said, wooden dowels, and you just simply stick them into the frame. The holes are pre-drilled, and then you put the latex supports onto the frame. Then you span the slats across those latex supports. You basically just roll them out on top of it, and then you put the mattress and the wool on top. And those latex supports, it's the same latex as in the mattress. It's just it's a bit of a different firmness because it has to take a different load. It's very concentrated, whereas in the mattress, your body obviously spreads out your weight over its area. But once they get onto the slats, it's all basically on single points, right and left. And so they just have to be a different firmness than the mattress. Then we make the slats. Again, they are engineered solid wood. Again, it's wood that's cut and then put together in a certain way and shaped in a certain way. And the point of them is that they are as flexible as possible. Now, as flexible as possible means there are obviously some constraints there because you don't want them falling off the bed. So they are attached in a few places. We use some Velcro. We tried, because making Velcro, it isn't the cleanest process. There are, quote unquote, cleaner materials around it, but we had to make a compromise here. We tried with we would drill little holes into the slats on every fifth or sixth one, and then we would have little strings come out, and you would tie them up, and that was fine, but it was really hard not to have the strings rip off with time, depending on the weight of the person sleeping. And so we ended up going back to the Velcro because there was just a compromise that had to be made, because the bed first has to be the number one purpose is to give you good sleep, and the number two purpose is to try to find the best materials to allow that. And so anyway, we had to go back to Velcro, and maybe one day a different idea springs up and we'll change the system again, but that's where we're at. So those slats are connected to the latex supports, and we aren't concerned about them breaking. I sometimes have people ask, what if your kids jump on them? And I'm like, they're not going to break them. I used to play football with my son on the bed, and we bounce around, and I weigh roughly 180 pounds or so, and we weren't exactly easy on the bed itself, and so usually to put people's minds to rest when they ask at a showing, I'll just stand on one of the slats. I'll put the mattress over. I flip the mattress over. I stand with all my body weight on a slat, and I bounce around a little bit up and down. And they say, "Look, the thing's pretty strong." But maybe one day it will break, but then they could be easily replaced. That wouldn't be an issue. But so far, no replacements, and we're not really expecting any unless you put an axe to it, really.
That's awesome. And so we talked about the latex mattress and then the sheep wool topper. What's the purpose of that? Is it if someone sweats, just to increase the lifespan of the mattress?
Yeah, actually, maybe we didn't talk about. You sort of touched on one thing for the mattress earlier about when you opened the box, and you have this latex smell and the wool, and you smell. Oh, maybe we should go back to the frame. One more thing, you would also smell the wax that we put on the frame. Usually it depends on the company, but it's more common that they put a lacquer or some sort of maybe oil wood. It depends on companies, do it differently on how they finish their wood. We put wax on it, Um, Again, we get that one from Germany, and it is the same wax that they use on children's wooden toys. So, there wouldn't be, if you have an infant that comes around and starts chewing on the bed frame, there isn't any concern that it would be harmful in any way. Because as far as wood finishes, it is the most natural, least chemical one that we can find. So people may smell that, but that it's usually a concern. People will ask me. So when I sometimes, not very often, it depends on how much research people have done. I usually get a good idea on sort of in the email communications or on phone conversations, and those who have done little research and just found us and want to buy something, they sometimes ask, do I have to air out the mattress for 2-3 weeks? Because it never occurred to me. I never had to do it in my life, but I guess that's what people have to do these days. And so I tell them, look, there's no concern. You can sleep on it from the first night on. The latex smell does fade away a little bit because while we have the mattresses here, all the mattresses are together, so the smell is contained within the package that they sit in, and so then within 2-3 weeks, the latex smell fades away. But even on night one, you can sleep on it, and most people wouldn't even consider latex smell to be very aggressive to begin with. What people are usually concerned about is the chemicals that come along with your latex mattress, and they're quite, they can be quite bad. So much that you can't sleep on it for a day or a week, or some people up to a month. So yeah, so that's always, for some people it's a concern, but I remember there was one guy, he was sort of more on the autistic spectrum. And so he was very sensitive to smells, and he was really the only one I can remember who couldn't sleep on the bed from night one on. But that had more to do with his sensitivity than with anything else.
Yeah, I think they're called volatile organic compounds, right? VOCs that come off these synthetic
Yeah,
materials, and it's scary to think about. Like most people in the United States and probably in other countries as well, they get a brand new bed, synthetic, like you were saying, the memory foam or whatever, and they're in this bedroom with the doors shut, the windows shut, and they're probably just inhaling way over the safety limit of VOCs for days or weeks after they get this new mattress. Because I'm sure a lot of people don't follow the directions. They're like, oh, I need it right now to sleep on tonight. So they just throw it up in their bedroom and then just make it a gas chamber in there. And the studies on VOCs, lung damage and organ damage, liver damage, it's pretty scary.
yeah, yeah. It's one of these silent little things. You may get a headache, or some people maybe don't get any symptoms, but it's the same with the EMF thing. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. It's just you just don't have the sensory apparatus, shall we say, like others do. Um, yeah, so I take that usually as a benchmark in terms of safety. Some people say, look, uh, when you go to the dentist and they tell you about X-rays, like there's less, whatever you call it, in there than in a banana. I'm like, if that's your safety standard, that kind of sucks. That's
I think ionizing radiation or something. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm
That's
like,
fun.
yeah, that's fine. I still don't like what you do. So please give me the vest. My safety standard is I want to wear the vest if I need to get the X-rays done. So
Yeah, well, you look at the EPA here in the U.S. and there's a good website, tapwaterdatabase.org, and you can type in where you live, your zip code, and it'll show the levels of your municipal water above the EPA standards. And usually it's like 50 times more, 200 times more, 300 times more of trihalomethanes or
wow.
whatever in the water. And it gets freaky. I mean, all these things add up. It's a slow kill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always, it's hard to put your finger on one of the ones. It's usually cumulative effect from all things, and so we try to put we try to keep those things out of our product as much as possible. I guess you asked about the sheep wool, so there's a couple of things about it. It's not a comfort layer. The 4-inch Talalay latex mattress is more or less the comfort layer, and your weight gets projected down onto the slats, so much that if you're a healthy individual, and you sleep only on your back, you could sleep on just the slats, and you actually probably find it quite comfortable, because of the way it conforms to your body. Now, if you sleep on your side, it's gets a bit, a bit firm. But on your back, if you lay there on your back, it's quite enjoyable actually. But we add a 4-inch latex mattress to it because it's probably nicer to have some cushion there. And it's also much more practical for people that sleep on their side. But so then on top of that, sheep wool doesn't add anything for comfort really. It's purely for hygiene that it's added. Now, the sheep wool again comes from Switzerland, and I guess if we categorize sheep wool, sheep wool can either come from a dead sheep or from a live sheep. And the reason would be, as soon as the sheep is dead, the wool dies with it. And if the sheep's alive, the wool, in a sense, is still alive in terms of what it does on the sheep. Now, and then, so it comes from live sheep. Then we can categorize the live sheep into wool that gets cut off and is never touched, and wool that's cut off and all sorts of things are done to it, like treated for mites and moths and various other things. And as soon as you start treating it, the wool dies once again. And if you don't treat it with anything, then the wool continues to stay alive like it did on the sheep. So that when so this wool that we get from Switzerland, all they do is they cold wash it and they pick through to get some of the imperfections out of it. But many of them remain. And so if you look at our sheep wool topper, I had one lady, she called me and it's like, I think there's mold in my sheep wool topper. And I'm like, probably not, but send me a picture. And so she sent me a picture, and sure enough, it's one of those imperfections, a darker piece of wool, or sometimes there's actually like a piece of brush in there, or a stick or something like that. You could find them because these things usually get, bleached out and all the other things, like when you hot wash it and all this stuff sort of disappears. But the problem is when you do that, you kill the wool, because while it's on the sheep, it's self-cleaning. And if you cut it off the sheep and you don't do anything to it, it continues to be self-cleaning. So when you sweat at night, it will capture the moisture, and then it breaks down those sweat particles. And then as air moves through the sheep wool topper, it cleans it out again. It releases all that dirt back into the atmosphere, and you, in theory, have a clean bed every night. And so sheep wool is said to take on about 3 times its own weight in water, which is more than you can sweat in one night. And so there isn't a big concern about stuff going through into the mattress. Now, it could happen that, with young children, that they pee the bed, and then, and usually that could be a lot. And sometimes it goes through to the mattress, and we can talk about that. But at least for the sheep wool, it also takes that pee, it captures it, and then it cleans it out. And then so next day, when my son was younger and he would pee the bed, we take off the sheep wool, we hang it up, and about 4 hours later, you could not tell that somebody peed in this bed, because it's really good at getting rid of smell. We tried it with cigarette smoke. We put the sheep wool blanket in a room that was full of cigarette smoke, and it reeked really terribly bad. And it, about half a day or so, you had no idea that it stunk like cigarettes. And it's all because the wool has not been hot washed. It hasn't been treated with any chemicals. Like all the chemical treatments, what they want to achieve with it is what the sheep wool naturally is already. Like it's naturally mite resistant, it's naturally moth resistant, it's naturally all these things. But so you just wonder why exactly it needs to be treated with all these things when it's naturally all of these things already.
Wow, that was all fascinating. You're making me want to get sheep here because I overbuilt the goat enclosures. Just have 3 goats right now, and so I'd probably need help shearing them, but that's really fascinating about the wool being alive. I want to dive into that more through a book or something.
It
I'm
does
sure
make
there's, yeah.
wool does make for good blankets. Also, we don't sell any blankets right now, but if you can get your hands on a wool blanket, the nice thing about it also is it's quite breathable, and so when you like the traditional blanket, you may have down and feathers or something like that. Um, but if you see the duck on the pond, it doesn't sink because the feathers keep all the moisture out, right? Otherwise, the thing would go soaking wet and would start to drown. But it doesn't. It was designed to swim and to not drown. And so the sheep, on the other hand, if a sheep falls into the pond, it will drown because it doesn't keep the water out, but it actually soaks it up. So when you have a down and blanket, for example, down and feather blanket, um, what you do is, in a sense, over top of you create a barrier, and the air can't go out through the blanket, but it captures it all in between the blanket and the bed. And so if you have a traditional bed, and you may have some waterproofing topper on top of it, which basically seals the bed under you, and then you have a blanket with down feathers, you create, in a sense, a chamber where all the air stays inside, all the moisture stays inside, and it stays on you. Now with the sheep wool below you allows that your sweat can go down and off your body, so you don't sleep in your sweat with the sweat on your body or right under your back. And then the other thing, if you can get your hands on a sheep wool blanket, is that it also allows the air to go out above you, and so you're much less likely to sweat. Actually, you're probably not going to sweat because you have good airflow. I mean, okay, there's always some people, but on average, let's say.
Wow, that's fascinating. So many questions that came out of that. Let's see, I'll organize it here. Um, I'll start with this one. Like, are there any bedding materials that putting over like the sheep's wool at the top, like a fitted sheet, that wouldn't be good? Like, I'd imagine someone wouldn't buy your bed and then put like a polyester based sheet on top. But was it linen, cotton, natural materials that are breathable? Um, Probably will work with the bed, right? Where like a plastic, like polyester, like synthetic bedding would probably not help with what you were just saying with sweat and all that, because it would kind of block. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I recommend to people that you don't put one of these waterproofing things over top of the sheet wall, like those mattress protectors, because the sheet wool does already do that job. Um, in terms of bedsheet, because I said, as the air moves through, it releases all that dirt, that it captures all these particles. It does that through the bedsheet. You don't have to take off the bedsheet every day, and it's just a matter, if you have a heavy blanket, you should probably leave it uncovered a few times of the week, or you just don't do your bed at all. Then you're golden if you're one of those kinds of people. Um, but yeah, any fitted sheet really works as long as it's not engineered to be waterproof in a sense. So as long as it lets air go through it, then it's just fine.
Awesome. Yeah, I was using and I've had them on the show, the Chili Pad, several years ago, and then last year I went fully off grid where I am now, and I realized that it wasn't practical to have that running all night, even though it doesn't use a ton of power. Um, what I found is that putting those pads, so basically it's like these pads that you put, like I was using over your sheep's wool, like right under the fitted sheet, these pads that have water channels, and then it cools the water. So in the summer, theoretically, you can sleep cold. And there's a bunch of companies now selling these things. But what I found is that I didn't sleep as well in combination with your bed. I don't know if it would work better on another bed, but it was polyester based, the pads. And so it took me months to figure that out. And once I did, I took it off the bed, and I felt like I slept cooler, just with not sleeping on polyester. but it's something that people have to experiment with, I think, in their climate and find what works.
Yeah, yeah. I guess these things. I mean, they have their place, but I would say it's probably not designed for our bed because it, in theory, takes care of that already. Because the sheep wool is cooling in the summer, it doesn't run hot on you, and gets nice and warm in the winter. The biggest test I had was a couple of women that were in menopause, and it was very important for them that the bed was not running hot. And before then, I'd never considered it. I thought it was I just heard men talk about it, but then various women came. They're like, "Look, I'm 50 or so, and I just want to not sleep hot anymore." And I'm like, "Okay, I think I can help you with that. You can give this a try." And yeah, they've all been very happy. And the reason is, the sheep wool does a good job, but then also the mattress itself, because it's the Talale latex, the Vita latex, which is engineered to be more breathable than the average latex. Latex itself is already quite breathable, but then the Volatile, they have engineered it in such a way that it allows for even more airflow. And because then under the bed, our bed is designed that it's open under, so you can have airflow going all the way through. And so it, in theory, should take care of those concerns. 99 times out of 100, there's always somebody, but generally, I don't have any negative feedback on sleeping hot. I don't think I've ever had somebody who was concerned who came back and said, no, it didn't address my problem. But maybe one day there will be somebody.
Great. And another question that came up for me is putting the different components out in the sun to sterilize it, to like deep clean or super clean it. Because I used to do that with my pillows. I would take off the cover of the pillow and then just put the pillow out in full sun in the summer and turn it, to just get the UV light on it. And maybe it made things worse because the pillow was synthetic. I don't know, but I would imagine that's helpful with your materials. Like I have a deck here. Like, could I put the sheep's wool topper, once a month or something in the summer out to just get a deep clean, or is it even necessary? And same thing with the mattress.
Yeah, for the sheep wool, because you can't clean it with anything, with any chemicals, any soaps. Because no, it always cleans itself. But just like the sheep out in the field, it does get rained on from time to time, and it gets bleached out by the sun. And so it's the same thing with our wool. What we recommend is that once or twice a year, we generally do it at the beginning and the end of the summer, where we take the wool outside, put it on the clothesline, and completely drench it in cold water, and then we just let it dry in the sun. And if you have a nice hot day, by nightfall you can use the sheep wool again, or maybe you have to go one day without. But that's really the way to clean it, just to give it an overall clean again. And the sun also does really good at bleaching out some of the spots, because as you sweat and fluids go in there and go back out, it leaves sometimes stain rings, and so that stuff gets bleached out for the most part once you have it out in the sun. And then the cotton cover, I guess we didn't talk about that. Around the mattress, we have a organic cotton cover. It's organic, but I personally, look, this thing 10 years ago was not considered organic, and then it's still the same one, but people wanted to have it called organic, so the manufacturer said, okay, we're going to do the certification. It's still the same old cotton as back then, but now it's organic. And so that's around the mattress, just as a protector. And you can take that off, and it's pre-washed and pre-dried, so you can put it in the washer and the dryer, or you can just wash it and hang it outside. And it simply zips on and off. Now there is a zipper on that, but so there is technically metal on it, but it's aluminum, and aluminum is neutral, doesn't carry any EMF. So that despite there being technically metal on it, but it's call it EMF friendly metal. Again, and it goes back to what's practical at the end of the day. It's it's kind of hard to sew the thing back together every time you take it off.
And
Um,
is that kind of the same process? Could you unzip that and wash it like the sheep wool and put it out in the sun? Would there be benefit to that? Or
yeah, just for general cleaning would be just that alone. You can do it. Because with most mattresses, the problem is always, you know, over the years, you don't really know what happens inside your mattress because, you sleep, you sweat, and it takes on a life of its own sometimes, even and houses things that you probably don't want in your mattress. So the point of it is you can take the whole thing apart. Latex is it doesn't attract any because so for example if you're in a big city people ask about bed bugs and various things like that and so latex is what was the name of it, let me just think about it, it's antibacterial and so meaning it doesn't have anything for them to eat in there so they won't they may come looking in it and then they say oh nothing to eat in here, let's go somewhere else. And so the only places they would end up then would be the cotton cover, which you can wash if you do have some sort of a bug problem, or the sheep wool, and that sheep wool cleans itself out again. So they don't really like sitting in sheep wool because they find they get rejected in there. And so at the end of the day, you could clean the bed like down to its bare bones in a sense. Whereas, other mattresses, you may not be able to actually clean your mattress. You can just sort of clean around it, but you don't really know what happens inside.
that's a good point about the bed bugs and the dust mites. I think I saw some really gross, like Discovery Channel or Nova documentary about the microscopic uh, bugs, specifically dust mites that live in mattresses, and the numbers were almost unbelievable. Like I think it was millions of dust mites, and they weighed so many pounds and increased the weight of the mattress. Like you can weigh the mattress before and after sleeping on it for several years, and it's super gross. And these critters live on dead skin cells, is my understanding. And so when we
Yeah,
shed, well,
yeah. So
that's
it
like their
actually
food.
that adds another point to the sheep wool. Because yeah, they are technically Huslernes did some research on this, and I remember seeing that just a few months ago or so on the dust mites and how they eat skin, and so technically they are our friends because they eat this dead skin that we shed. Um, but the problem is, that's the good thing they do, and there's other problems that we get from them, like allergic, like allergies and various things. But so the sheep wool, what happens is it also breaks down these dead the skin cells that we shed, and so once again the mites, the dust mites don't find anything to eat, even though if they were there, they would do us a favor by eating this stuff away. But we don't need them there because the sheep wool takes care of that. So that's another little bonus of the sheep of real sheep wool. So, and I guess just for general understanding, basically, if you go to the store and you can buy a sheep wool sweater or jacket or something like that, and they say you can wash it, you can be sure that the wool is dead. So if you can find one that they are pretty meticulous about and say that you can't wash this, then you have a higher certainty that the wool is still self-cleaning, and then which means you don't have to wash them; it does it itself.
That's incredible. Yeah, I'm fascinated. Like, there's a huge untapped market because everyone's looking to start their own business, right? And I try to help. Like, please come out with this company. And I think this was like 4 or 5 years ago. I was looking for Nettle clothing because I think the Germans used that in World War II, and it was a German thing. It's like using nettles to make jackets and stuff like that and pants. Um, I don't know if your dad ever talked about that, but it that seems like a really beneficial material.
Personally, not heard of it, but we have lots of nettles in Germany. It wouldn't be out of the question that we'd make use of them. Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, it blows my mind now when I go clothes shopping like once a year now or something, or just rely on what my parents buy me for Christmas. But I'll look at what they're selling, and most clothes now are like a mix of like polyester, like 90% from what I've seen, and these are like really expensive brands. I'm like, wow, where's all the wool stuff and all the natural materials?
Yeah, yeah. It goes back to, I mean, just to bring it back to the beds, but it goes back to, it will say a cotton this, and then you look at the details and it says, but 95% polyester, 5% cotton, but yet it's a cotton, whatever, shirt or a sweater or something like that. And like with our beds, I try to, somebody once asked me, can you sell it to me? And I'm like, in a sense, like, can you convince me to buy your product? And I'm like, look, I'm not a salesman. I'm just an engineer. I'll tell you how it is. And then please decide yourself if you like it or not. And so on the website, I try to, we talked earlier about sort of price. And so one of the reasons we can sell it for what we do is, I built this website myself, and it's gone through various iterations. But I simply thought, look, if I have a good product, which I believe we have, I just need to tell you about it. I don't need to convince you. I just need to tell you all that it has and all that it does, and then you can make up your own mind about it, and you may be convinced by the details and not by me saying we use 100% whatever this or that, and really it's only 97% latex. I can tell you it's 97% and tell you why it's 97%, and then maybe you agree that 97% is better than 100%.
That's a good point. I'm curious, what do you and your wife use for bedding, like in the summer versus the winter? Like, do you guys use wool in the winter and then switch to a different material when it gets warmer?
We're in Canada here. So it does get a little bit colder. Although in Idaho, it's not that warm either in the winter. We use a wool blanket in the winter, and I use a wool blanket all throughout actually. And if it's too hot, I use nothing. But even in the summer, because it lets the air go through, I find it quite nice.
Yeah, I've tried
My
to
wife
sleep.
basically she doubles up in the winter and goes single wool in the summer. So.
Oh wow, that's interesting that you could sleep with nothing over you. I find I just like the weight. I don't know what it is, so it's just a matter of finding something light enough or breathable enough.
Yeah. Oh, that actually reminds me. One of the things, because we're talking about this, one of the things that our bed is not good for is, and this never occurred to us because in Germany we don't sleep that way. We have you have your bed, you have your bed sheet over your bed, and then you have yourself, and then a blanket over top. But in North America, it's still somewhat common where people have themselves, then they have a bed sheet, and then they have a blanket over top, and they sort of tuck the bed sheet in at the feet. And that's the one thing we can't do with our bed because you have nothing to tuck it in at the bottom. So I had a few people ask about that, and I had to disappoint them. They said just I guess become a little bit more European and just buy a blanket and forget about the bedsheet because you buy a blanket that has a cover around it, so you can take that off. You can wash that. I guess that's the concern. You want something you can wash.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see. Do you want to go into some Q&A questions? Because we have some good ones here.
Sure. I'm
Was there
just
anything
going to
else
look.
you want to cover?
We sort of touched on it. Yeah, we sort of touched on it twice on the price or why we. I would say, you saw the price when I sent it to you, and you had your thoughts about the price. And some people ask, how can we sell this for the price that we do? Obviously, it isn't cheap, but I'd say it's affordable. Roughly speaking, you're looking at a bed, depending on what wood you want for the frame. But let's just say between like a queen to a king bed, maybe it's between $2,500 to $3,000, depending on where you live, and that would include shipping. That's for the whole bed setup with a frame, and just some of the points of why we can maybe sell it for that price point. And one of them is, well, if you haven't listened to Matt Blackburn or hadn't had a friend talk about it, you probably need to do a lot of research to find us, because we don't. I don't really do advertising. First of all, I don't have time because people are buying them without, but also, it adds a lot of cost to a product. Most products are like they are quite loaded with advertisement costs that you pay. If you see a TV ad, it's going to cost a lot of money to create a TV ad, and that reflects in the product's price at the end of the day. We have really good connections with our Swiss friends from Nest, so we get the materials for a really good price. If we didn't have them, there's no way we could sell it at the price that we do. Other small things. I try to, like, for example, if you go into a store and you pick up a product, there's a 3%, roughly 3% of the cost is just for you to use your credit card. So I give you the price without credit card, and if you really want to use credit card, well, you're going to have to pay the extra 3%, but at least, you have the option to go without. And, small things. I always trying to reduce overhead costs. I recently got into accepting cryptocurrencies because we're in Canada. The bank question is let's just say it's questionable. But it's another way for people to say, look, I don't want to pay whatever your bank fees might be to send a bank transfer, or I don't want to pay the PayPal fees, but I use Bitcoin or I use US dollar coins, and I can send them without any transaction fees. So there's always looking for small ways that we can keep the price where it is and don't have to add more fixed cost on it than we have to do it. But those are probably the bigger points why the bed costs what it does. We're a small business. It's basically my dad and I building them. It's mostly him. I just help him out. My wife helps out a bit, and when certain tasks when he needs help. So we don't have to support a big empire behind it. And then also we thought that the people roughly spend 10 years on a bed. After 10 years, you buy a new one on average. The manufacturer may say 5 years, but most people still keep it for 10 years around. And I'm just thinking about like a regular Coil mattress. They usually are done after 5 years, but people keep them around for a little bit longer. And so we thought, look, there's in North America, basically the U.S. population is 350 million people, roughly speaking. That means in the U.S. alone, you have 35 million beds sold every year, if you think that every person buys one every 10 years. And so there's a lot of, and then so if you say, look, your bed costs $10,000 maybe, then that means there's only so few people that could potentially afford that. And so we know our production cost for the beds, and we know what we need to make a living. And we say, look, we can live with this price. And the price that we chose is one where, if you're a teacher and your husband or your wife is a mechanic or a plumber or whatever, you could save. You may have to save for half a year and you can afford it. You don't have to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that in order to afford a good night's sleep. That was the thinking. And hopefully, I'm more in terms of business. I think if a product's good, if you can sell many items for less cost, it's just as good or better than just selling a few at a lot of cost. So most people would probably appreciate that too. I thought, at least when I buy stuff, that's how I think about it.
I love it. Yeah, it's kind of how I run Mitolife, no advertising, and I think your beds are super affordable. I think it's a great price, especially if you go around and shop and look at stores at the mall or in your shopping center, the bed stores. It's just ridiculous for what you get. And it's all, you know, VOCs and synthetics, and it's horrible. Kind of a oddball question for you, Hendrik. Like, what what if I wanted to plan ahead and just have a mattress in storage, like in my shop or whatever, as like a prepping thing, like if the world ends? How long would that last hypothetically in the box? Would it last longer?
Yeah, it would. So the latex, the way it deteriorates, like most mattresses will deteriorate predominantly based off the weight that they support, like a coil. It takes the weight, and then depending on how far along it's taken the weight, it may come back to 99% or 90% of its original length. Um, the latex works a little bit different in terms of how it fatigues. It does fatigue a little bit over time with in terms of getting a dent in it. It's fairly minimal. So from personal experience, the longest I had this queen bed before I got married was, something like 7 years, and then I gave it to a friend because I told him, look, this thing is like brand new. I'm not going to throw it out. And so I gave it to him, and after about 10, 11 years, you could see roughly about a half an inch dip in it. But, it was nothing that overly affects your sleep, especially after 10 years. But most of the deterioration comes from it being exposed to sunlight. The UV does dry up the latex quicker than if it's not exposed to it. So if you keep it in a bag and you keep it in a shed or like in some dark room, then it will last quite a bit longer. The natural life of latex is 13 years, and so at Volatile in the Netherlands, they make a few different kinds of mattresses, and this is the kind where they say we add nothing to make it last longer or anything. And so it's, you get a minimum of 13 years out of it. You may get more. In Switzerland, because they've sold these since the 80s, it was just a few years ago that their last original customer came and got a new mattress. Now, that was sort of an odd one. It was after almost 40 years that the lady needed it to be replaced. Most people are probably between the 15 and 20-year mark. But yeah, that's how it deteriorates mostly. Is sunlight is the one.
Okay, interesting. So don't do that sun cleaning with the mattress itself.
Well, yeah, you could put it outside, I think, for a day or so just to, get it sterilized again. That's not an issue. It's just when it's prolonged period of times in the sun exposed to it, then that's a problem.
Makes sense. Awesome. Have you ever looked into a inverted bed therapy? Years ago, I got into it. I forget the guy that invented it, but basically you raise the bed 4 to 6 inches at the head, and the idea is it increases your circulation, because you think it would be the opposite. You would think you would want all the blood to go to your head and have your feet higher, but he was saying the reverse: raise the head of your bed. And I stopped doing it because I ended up waking up at the bottom. Like, I slid down my bed in the middle of the night and I would wake up at the bottom and I was kind of disoriented.
Yeah, I had a couple of customers bring it up, and we did. There was a handful, I think, where they wanted the legs higher. So because we build everything ourselves, we can just adjust it if somebody wants to sleep so and so many inches higher. Like, we would always suggest probably stay with the 6 inches is very high on the head, because the latex does start to slide down, because the way our standard mattress system is designed, it's not enclosed by a frame. Now, if somebody wants to, we can build an enclosed frame and it would contain it better. But custom work is usually, it does cost a little bit, because it's, when it's outside of your normal production, it takes a lot more in labor costs to build it. But so I had a few people ask for it. Personally, I'm undecided of what to do with it. I can see the benefits from it, in terms of the detox. The downside of it I see is that, once you go on a slant, your body weight now, like if you lay down flat and you draw an arrow to where your body weight points, it goes straight down. It's at a 90-degree angle all across your body. Now, if you go on an angle, you're no longer pushing down at a 90-degree angle, and so it's a bit angled now. And so then your discs, I don't know what happens to the pressure on your discs if they're still able to relax like they're supposed to. So you have some compromises there that you may end up, detoxing more, but actually sleeping a little bit worse. And then the question is, okay, can you detox another way and like sleep good and detox? Is there a way to do both?
That's a good point. What about this one? Should we sleep in complete darkness?
Well, as somebody who's lived in the country and the city, darkness is certainly better. I'll tell you how we set up our bedroom. So we don't have a TV in the bedroom. We try not to have cell phones or various things in the bedroom. It's not always perfect, but you try to, when we were in the city, we, try to get those windows dark as much as possible because, city lights are quite bright. In the country, it's not a problem. We're in the middle of nowhere. There's no light, so it's pretty black at night. And so, yeah, I mean, it just goes back to, basic human, shall we say, if we think back of the caveman, the ideal, before the light bulb was invented, we would always sleep in darkness. And so it's a fairly new technology still, I guess, a few hundred years. It wasn't designed that way, but we invented it that way. It doesn't mean it's bad, but I always find, if you can go back to the basics, you're probably better off. Although some of these things are always hard to nail down, with real certainty if one's better than the other. But it seems more intuitive to sleep in complete darkness than to sleep in the light, just by experience.
Yeah. I've done a lot of experiments with that, and I found there's no cheat to the timing of going to bed. Like, I find that more important than the amount of hours I get. Like, if I go to bed, I think it's 10 to 2, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is like the best window to be asleep. And I've tried to break those rules for years off and on, and it's never worked. I always feel worse the next day if I'm awake during that time.
Yeah. Certainly consistency is the thing. I mean, if you're a night owl, then okay, maybe you want to sleep 12 to 8 or something like that, but you should try to get 7 hours probably is a good amount. We did touch on this at the beginning, where you said people, we think about all these things, but we generally don't think about the bed. We think about melatonin and whatever, all these things we can do to prepare us for sleep or to prepare the environment, but we don't think too much about the bed. It is you on average you sleep 1/3 of your life, give or take a little bit. So number one thing should be, obviously you want to be in a house, in a room, but what you sleep on is very important. And then you can play around with some of the other things as well. But the most important factor of sleep is still of what you sleep on, because you sort of can't change this once you're asleep.
Right. Hendrik, we didn't cover the pillow, and this is a good question. Someone said, what's the ideal pillow for proper sleep posture? So you guys include a pillow, right, when people buy the bed?
Yeah, we have pillows. Like people have bought them separately, but it's always have to look for shipping costs because we're not Amazon. We don't get preferred shipping rates. But so when people buy them with the beds, they usually, get them a bit cheaper. We use a tele latex pillow. It's basically the same as the mattress system. It's wrapped in cotton and it's wrapped in sheep wool once again. So it's the same idea. You can clean it all, and and it has a hygiene component around it, which is pretty important for a pillow because that's where your face is. For our bed, we find, well, so when you lay down, most beds, because you sink in quite a lot compared to our bed, anyways, or compared to a latex bed, let's say. Well, I should say compared to our bed because there's just too many latex beds. So I'll just compare it to our beds. So people sink in a lot, so they need to sleep quite high up with the head. On our bed, you sleep much flatter, so you need a much smaller pillow at the end of the day. I mean, what's important is when people ask me, what should I get? I'm like, look, I always recommend kind of a foam. If you can get a natural latex, I think that's probably the best. And then just because, so some people ask sheep wool pillow and this pillow, and I'm like, well, if you have loose material in your pillow, that means as you move around at night, you're going to start displacing that material to the outside, and you start going lower and lower and lower and lower, and eventually you get to the point where it's unnatural because you want your spine to be somewhat straight, or like if you're on your side, you want it to have roughly a straight line from head to pelvis, and if you're on your back, then you want to follow the natural curve. So if your pillow gets smaller over the course of the night, that does seem to, at some point, you get to a point where it's no longer that good for you. You get past the good stage, shall we call it? So with our pillow, the way it's solved, again, we get these from Hüsler Nest, or through Hüsler Nest, and they have, it's been about a year, 2 years probably, they come up with this pillow. Well, they had somebody come up, they don't make them themselves, but the company who makes it came up with this pillow that has two slices in it. So, if you have smaller shoulders, then you can take out a slice of latex and you have a lower pillow. If you have wide shoulders, then you leave the piece in. And so you can experiment around a little bit. And I always say, if you have a husband, wife, parents, partner, whatever, get them to just look at how you lay there sleeping. Does it look natural or does it not? Is there a kink in there? Then you should probably change it up. If it's, if it looks natural, then that's a good start. And so it's a good way to prevent a lot of upper back and neck pain. It's mostly related to the pillow, although your bed does have something to say as well. But more often than not, neck pain, you should look at your pillow.
Have you seen the pillows that are higher on one side than the other? Do you have any thoughts on those?
Well, ours technically are. They are shaped with two bumps. One is a bit lower than the other, which some person may, depending on how their body is structured, they may prefer one way around or another. The problem is, so our pillows, they aren't cheap. $200 for a pillow is a lot of money. Again, it's latex, and I'd say, look, if you think about our bed and the pillows, you should think of it as an investment. If you get 10 years out of it, $200 may not be all that bad. Especially with inflation these days, in 10 years, that's going to be peanuts. But so yeah, I say, look, you think of it as an investment, and look, if you don't want to buy a pillow from us, buy it from somewhere else. But at least try to find something that is, that works for your body. Try to find some foam, some latex foam, or ideally something natural that you don't have any off-gassing, and then you go from there.
Have you ever heard of people sleeping without a pillow? Because we had a few questions to pillow or not to pillow. And I experimented with this several years ago where I just felt intuitively, I'm just going to get rid of my pillow for a little while. And I don't know if it helped. I mean, I was on a subpar mattress at that point, so I don't know. But in terms of your bed, would you say it's harmful to not have a pillow with the slat design?
Well, I would say, so if somebody sleeps on their stomach, they should sleep on our bed without a pillow, because again, you look at the way your spine curves, and if you sleep on your stomach, you probably don't want your head, way back there. You want it somewhat in line with your body. The simple answer is that I would give is, look, you look at, if you like to sleep on your side, you lay on your side, and if you can keep your head straight without needing a pillow, then you don't need a pillow. If you can't keep your head straight without needing a pillow, then you should probably use a pillow. So it depends a little bit on the person, but I think most people should probably sleep. I have not come across a person who thought that our bed needs no pillow if they slept on their back or on their side. Only when they were on their stomach, I would recommend they don't use a pillow. And if they do, very, very thin pillow, but back and side, it's probably better. Just when you look at the alignment of the spine.
That's good to know about your pillow. I never noticed that one side was higher than the other. It must be really slight, right? Because you can't really see if you're looking down at it.
Just a little bit, yeah.
That's cool. This is a funny one. Maybe the last. I change my sheets like once a month. Is that gross? And if so, why?
Well, if that means you buy new sheets every month, then I'm like, you probably buy more sheets than any of us do. But I don't know. Like, if you're a bachelor, maybe you don't care. If you have a wife, she may care, and she may, it's yeah.
Yeah, probably you have to look at how often you're showering and how often you're sweating, and a lot of variables there.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's probably a good idea to wash it every now and again.
We had a few questions. We can end on this one. Soft versus hard mattresses. So when you get the latex mattress, I don't think you mentioned it, but there's two sides, right? So one's softer and one's harder. So you can flip it depending on, and you guys recommend to start on the soft side, right? I believe.
Yeah. So the mattresses come in, basically there's three. When you look at it from the side, there's three layers to it. It would be rated as a firm side. The middle part is it's a bit firmer than both sides because it takes a bit more weight, and then the other side is a medium firm side. I think in terms of IDL rating, because latex is, you don't get an actual number, you just get a range. I think, if I remember correctly, it's roughly a 30 and a 32 on one side and the other, roughly speaking. But it would be considered medium firm on one side and firm on the other side. But because it's Talalay latex compared to like a Dunlop latex, Talalay, it's a bit softer to begin with because of how it's made. Coincidentally enough, I remember doing the research, and when you look at various chiropractors, they will say you should probably sleep on a medium firm mattress. So it is good. For some people, it takes some time getting used to it. Because in North America, the average person sleeps very soft. It's all plush bed and pillow top, and so for some people it does take a little bit of time to get used to the bed. But yeah, you can flip it one way or another. So for example, if you have the king bed would come with two twins, and that would be contained in one king cotton cover, and you would have one king sheet wall and one king bed sheet over it. So from the outside, it looks like a king mattress, but when you open it up, you have two twins. So you could, if one person likes it a bit firmer, you'd flip the one side and you leave the other side on the softer side. But in any case, if you look at the encyclopedias for sleep, you'll find they will suggest it takes you about 1 to 2 months to get used to a new bed. We recommend, if you try something different, you got to try it for at least 7 nights. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good grasp on what's happening. And so also that sort of, we have a bit of a return policy. I mean, we're a small business, family-owned business, so we can't give out, 100 days or, return at will kind of thing, like Costco or, Amazon or somebody else does it. But, we know that almost all people will figure out within 1 to 7 nights on average how they respond to the bed. For some people, it takes longer, but it's quite rare. I find that of every 100 beds we sell, I find there's about 5 that may find it a bit too firm, and of those 5, 2 of them will end up returning the bed on average. It works out to be roughly 2% over the last 5 years that return the bed, and they just can't get used to it for whatever reason, and that's fine. There isn't a one size fits all really. It seems to be good for a lot of people, but we know at some point there's people that can't get along with it for whatever reason, and so we take it back, and I try to get them back within the return period of 21 days that we give. I think it happened once where it was a bit later because there was some strange circumstances, and so I figured out a deal with the person that he was happy with, and I paid him what we both agreed what the bed was worth, and so we took it back, and we both went away. At the end of the day, he wasn't overly upset because he didn't lose whatever, a couple of $1,000, and I had the bed back, and I had somebody here, a friend that needed one, and I'm like, look, this one's been barely used, because at the end of the day, after 2 weeks, the mattress looks like it's brand new, and after a year, it still looks like it's brand new. And so there's always friends that need a new bed, so give it to them.
What I just found the beds for the road on your website. I love that page. You guys offer beds even for semi-truck drivers, and you say campers.
Yeah, actually, we haven't really done any advertisement, just like I haven't done any advertisement much at all. But this one, my dad we were at a truck show, like a transport truck kind of a show, and was like, oh, well, these guys sleep all the time. They sleep horrible all the time, and that's all they complain about is their sleep, because they sleep on these $300 memory foam pads, generally speaking. And so we thought, well, maybe we can come up with a bed that they can just put into the truck, and then also because truck drivers they stop sometimes. Most times they sleep in the truck, but sometimes they will go into like a bed and breakfast or kind of an hotel thing, and if they are that kind, they can just take the mattress out, take it in the hotel, because it's the better bed anyways than in the hotel. And so we have those. We've got a few of them out there, and but haven't really had time to concentrate on that at all. I just put it on the website, say, look, here's what we've done. It also shows a little bit what we can do. So I had some people that have campers, and they had our bed at home, and they're like, oh, well, we now also want to sleep well when we go camping, and so we built them a custom kind for the camper. And so
that's cool. So if someone like stays at a lot of hotels, they could just get this, like bring this bag in, and just they would put it over the hotel bed. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's not light. It does weigh a good, I don't know, 40 pounds probably, and you can roll it up, but yeah, it's a possibility. Like, it fits in the trunk, it's fine, or on the back seat, but you would put it on the floor. You would want a solid surface under it, because just like our mattress system sits on these latex supports, which ultimately sit on wood, so that the base of it must be solid. So I have some people who have done it, or I have actually a couple of people who bought the truck bed for their home. I had a lady up in way north in Canada, in small houses and everything up there, and so she just puts it under her bed, and when she needs an extra bed, she pulls it out. And or other people they just store it away in the closet. I have a couple of people doing that when they expect somebody over, when they need an extra bed, and so then they pull it out.
That's cool. Wow, that's awesome. Well, Hendrik, this was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and I'm inspired to put my my topper and other things out in the sunlight here as we're getting full days of sun in North Idaho. And the whole thing about the sheep just blew my mind. So I'm going to be thinking about that for days. The alive versus dead wool is fascinating. And yeah, just appreciate you sharing your passion and wisdom and for providing a really affordable but powerful product that's really well built.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I'm afraid, just like anytime you make a post for us on Facebook or various places, my inbox explodes and it takes me weeks to catch up on all that stuff. Yeah. But, there's worse problems to have at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks, Hendrik. This was awesome. Stick around as I close out the show.
Thank you.
I love all the detail that goes into their bed. I thought it was really interesting when Hendrik said that you're an inch taller when you wake up if you've had a good night's sleep, and that during the day we're compressing our discs between the vertebrae of the spine. And when we rehydrate those discs, it makes sense that we actually get taller. I bet magnesium and copper are involved in that process. I know copper has this really deep relationship with the bone. I also really loved the sterilizing with sunlight tip that he gave once or twice a year. I thought I was cool years ago doing that with my pillows and my pillowcases, but this is really next level, doing that with natural material. I love hosting this podcast for so many reasons, but one of the big ones is when I can take something away from it to practically apply to improve my life. And until I recorded the show, I was using a really heavily arched pillow that was made of memory foam and polyester. And I actually got rid of that and started sleeping on the pillow that they include with their bed. One, because I didn't know that it has an arched side. One side of the pillow is higher than the other. And also just the point of the natural material, thinking that you're breathing right next to this thing. And even if you have a natural pillowcase, that polyester underneath still has its properties, and you're sleeping on plastic, essentially. So this is a do your best thing, like water and a lot of other aspects of health. I would say opening your window, keeping your window cracked is the top priority as far as keeping VOCs down. There's also house plants I've experimented with extensively over the last 8 years or so with snake plants and filling the bedroom with plants that actually reduce the level of volatile organic compound gases that you're inhaling. But I think just the simplest free thing to do is just to crack your window if you don't have to worry about noise pollution, which is a big issue with people living in the city. Often I forget, living here in the woods, that you can hear a pin drop 24/7. That's a luxury for a lot of people. And of course there's white noise machines, and you could run your humidifier or essential oil diffuser while your window is cracked to kind of drown out outside noise. It's a do your best, and it's an experimenting thing with optimizing your sleep. The average person spends 27 years sleeping, if we're assuming an average lifespan. So that's a long time of exposure. And so you want to continuously be thinking about the weakest links that you have in your bedroom and your sleep setup, and just slowly making upgrades and setting a bedtime and sticking to it. Give yourself half hour or so of give, but have a consistent sleep schedule and be continuously thinking about, okay, am I mouth breathing intermittently throughout the night? You might want to look into mouth taping, like the Somnifix that I have on my website, or nasal dilators. There's so many things that people overlook for their sleep. I like to do them all. I've tried a lot of these in combination, and it's definitely affected my energy, my mood, my creativity. Just the whole next day is so much better if I get a full night's sleep, especially on a high quality bed like this. I notice when I visit my family in California, when I sleep on their bed for 3 nights, I definitely start to feel it in my back and my brain. It's really hard to go back to a regular style bed after you've experienced this bed from CBH Wood Furniture. So if you're interested in purchasing a bed from them, you can go to swissdreambeds.com and you can email them or call them. And if you mention my name, you'll save a little bit on their beds. And I can't recommend them enough. It's completely transformed the way that I sleep. And if you want to support the show, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. Really exciting news. Rosita was sold out of their liquid cod liver oil, the raw, unprocessed, unfortified cod liver oil, and it just came back in stock. And if you use the discount code Blackburn, I think it's just a one-time use. You save on your first order. And this stuff's absolutely changed my life. I was shocked with the effects that I've been getting from this. And the further I delve into retinol, thanks to Morley Robbins and all of the research around retinol, and the Weston A. Price Foundation has a lot too. They have a great article I enjoy called Vitamin A-Mazing. And vitamin A, retinol, is so important for so many things. But if we just had to pick one thing, it's loading copper into the ceruloplasmin protein to express 24 plus enzymatic functions, foremost of which is called ferrooxidase, which is critical for iron regulation and iron recycling. And that occurs via 2 proteins called ATP7A and ATP7B. And it's the 13-cis retinoic acid, the hormone that loads 6 to 8 copper atoms, depending on who you listen to, into that ceruloplasmin protein. And you need that to utilize oxygen and convert that poison that we breathe into 2 molecules of H2O, water. And that's the process of making energy, ATP, or MAG-ATP, magnesium-bound ATP, which is how our body recognizes it. So these pieces are so important, and the piece that I was missing for sure with my health was this nutrient called retinol. It was my missing piece of the puzzle, and just plugging that in switched on my brain like I could have never imagined. So really powerful stuff, and there is a difference between marine source retinol and land source retinol, and I've felt that difference. I don't need to see a study to prove that to me. And my brand is called Mitolife. You can find those products at mitolife.co. And if you click shop at the top and then wellness, you'll see all of the supplements there. And I have some really exciting ones in the works. I have a freeze-dried liver product that has a nice twist to it. And then I'm working on bringing back the oyster supplement. So those are the 2 main focuses. And I'm also getting some cool ideas for other products to release later this year that I'm really excited about. But most of the products are in stock. I have whole food vitamin C, digestive enzymes, probiotics, Panacea Shilajit, mixed tocopherol, vitamin E, vitamin K2, systemic enzymes, magnesium, lactase enzyme, a lot of really cool stuff. I want to highlight the digestidol and the probiotic. A lot of people have digestive issues. Their gut is tore up, and I think glyphosate gets a lot of the blame. And yes, it's harsh. It chelates copper really well, but I think there's so many things, mainly iron, that are really affecting our intestinal integrity. And so just taking one, you don't have to take a handful like I did for years. I used to buy 1,000 capsules of a cheaper brand and take a handful out of the bag of digestive enzymes. And with my product Digest It All, I just need one. There's multiple different types of proteases, which are protein digesting enzymes. There's multiple different types of amylase enzymes in there, which digest carbohydrates and break them down into glucose, as well as a whole bunch of other enzymes: pectinase, invertase, cellulase, lipase, beta-glucanase. And then I put amla and rutin in there. So there's actually whole food vitamin C that I put in a few of my products, like Dissolve It All, which I think has a really powerful synergy, having that bioavailable copper with the systemic enzymes going through your system. But if you're experiencing gas and bloating frequently, I think it's a really good idea to take one capsule with every meal. That's what I do, just as kind of an anti-aging strategy. And 2 of the probiotics, at least with breakfast and with dinner, but you could do 3 times a day. But if you just did it with breakfast and dinner, and if you just did it once a day, like all of my supplements, you would still get an effect. But you really have to play with the dosages. I get asked every day, how much could I take if I'm pregnant, if I'm breastfeeding, XYZ. And since I'm not a doctor, I can't prescribe. I can't give you dosages that you can take. I can only tell you legally what I do. And generally, with any supplement, I always start with what's on the label. And that's always a good idea. It's always smart to start slow with any new supplement. But I also emphasize to people, as with the Rosita cod liver oil, if your body is asking for more, give it more. And so you just have to tap into that and listen to your body. And if it's asking for more vitamin E, for more vitamin K2, for more Shilajit, then take more. And if you have a negative reaction, maybe a Herxheimer's effect, a detox symptom effect, then back off. But I think people need to really get back in touch with their body, especially when they're taking supplements, and know when to increase and when to decrease. And a lot of things could be cycled. Like if you just cycled one of my supplements, it would be the probiotic. And it's just an endotoxin cleanse. So in 1 month of taking 2 capsules a day, you can reduce your endotoxin by 42%. And also systemic inflammation markers and triglycerides. And that's a really low dose. That's not much. And I wonder if you take double that a day, if it happens faster. And remember, these are different from regular probiotics, because when I got into health, when I was going to various Sprouts stores down in Southern California and trying all sorts of different probiotics while I was working minimum wage, multiple jobs, and just spending my paychecks on good food and supplements to experiment and improve my health, I thought the more strains, the better, and the higher count per bottle, the better. And if it's refrigerated, that's better. And I found out that was all false. And it's really about the spore-forming probiotics that actually have natural antibiotic-like effects. So they really help to clean out your intestines. At least that's been my experience. So you can check out the reviews under each product and kind of get an idea of what people have experienced with all my products. But try them out if you haven't. I put a lot of time and energy into researching and experimenting with these things. And it's really exciting to be able to bring it to you guys. And most importantly, educate on why to take them and how to use them as tools in your toolkit. So thank you for listening. There's a new episode released every Friday here on Mitolife Radio. And check out the YouTube Academy. That's Mitolife Academy on YouTube. And I have 4 private videos that I put out for advanced members every month and a live Q&A. And in that, I share my latest thoughts, revelations, experiments, new things that I'm trying. And that's a lot of fun for me to just connect with the community in that way and just rap for 2 to 3 hours answering questions and chatting with you guys. So that's it. See you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.